If you knew that you have the power to build and accomplish anything you want in life, you just need to dedicate time and be disciplined, you are going to make something great happen. And the fact that this is fake right now, what I'm looking at is literally my hands, but because I am doing animation, it looks like I'm actually grabbing some piece of energy orb right here. And the fact that I'm holding nothing, this is literally me doing some basic editing. Creativity is in the mix right here. It looks like I'm actually holding something very cool. The message in this is the following. If you can dream it, you can build it. All you need to have in reality is the time, dedication, and willingness to make it happen. Everyone can make it happen. All you need to do is sit down and work hard for it. Part 5. This is an extensive tutorial, but we're making it happen. We are almost there into the finish line. And when we have the entire backend configured and we got the smart contract ready to go, what is the last piece in this puzzle? It's the front end. We got to connect the front end so then the users can start interacting with the game. And we have players buying tickets and we have transactions going into the blockchain because the smart contract, it's going to be interacting with the web front end through the backend. Okay, so in this video, we are going to learn how to allow the smart contract to hold the ERC-20 token. Because remember, we have the jackpot. The jackpot has to be paid. How are we going to pay the winner? We need to hold ERC-20 tokens in the Lotto smart contract, okay? So for that, we are going to do a function that is going to allow us to deposit the ERC-20 tokens by allowing the smart contract to hold ERC-20 tokens. We have to make sure that we have that transaction capability available so that we can interact with the smart contract in case we need to refill the smart contract with ERC-20 tokens. So the smart contract, it's going to be holding those tokens, right? The moment a winner has been matched or has been found in a particular draw, we need to make sure that we have enough ERC-20 tokens so that we can pay the jackpot. Okay, which means that I have one of two things. I can either go and send the ERC-20 tokens myself using my wallet to the smart contract, or I could have a function in a quote administrator portal that will just allow me to push the button and it's going to auto fill the smart contract with tokens necessary to pay the jackpot. And we'll wrap a function that is just going to read the amount and request the amount to the wallet that we specify in the smart contract. In this case, the owner of the smart contract can be a great example. Okay, let's do that. And also let's have some visual statistics or visual data that we know that it's going in the application. Like for example, what's the current lottery draw ID? Let's also know how many tickets has been purchased in that particular draw ID or lottery ID. And finally, how much is the current jackpot? Let's have that. This will give us the opportunity to interact from an administrator perspective to make sure that we're monitoring the application and we know that, everything is going well, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Once we're done with this video, the last video is the final video. It's going to be the user front end. Why am I going to divide this into front end videos? One, we need to make sure that we understand that interaction between the front end and the back end. Second, I am going to be showing you how to configure in JavaScript, in this case in NextJS. How do we build that counter? Okay, so the counter of how much time is left in a particular draw, we need to build that counter so it can keep counting as we load the front page. Okay, so we'll obtain the values from Mongo database, but in this case, we're making the call to the backend. Remember, we're making the call to the backend. We're getting those values, or at least the timestamp or the time remaining from Mongo database through the backend. And then we will grab that and we'll continue decreasing the counter, okay? So that's very straightforward. Once we know how to do that, then on the last video, I don't need to go over that because I want to make sure that I explain that in a very, very clear manner. Once we go into the front end, all I'm going to be focusing in the front end is in the model that we are going to be configuring. So then the user will select the numbers that they want to play and pay the transaction, okay? And obtain the tickets, right? So I want to make sure that I don't cram too much material into one training video because it's going to be very long. So let's go ahead. Let's make it happen. Let's go and build the Lotto admin web front end, and let's have that capability so then we can deposit the custom ERC-20 token. All right, let's go ahead. Let's make this happen. Okay, so let's get started. First thing, let's build a Next.js instance, and then we'll go from there. We are building the Lotto admin front end, and we're going to be using Next.js. Okay, so I got a command prompt ready to go here. What I'm going to do, I am going to type npx create next app, and let's call this Lotto admin. Okay, and we are not going to be using TypeScript. We are yes, we're going to use ESLint. And we are not going to use a source directory, and we are not going to use the app directory, okay? Cool, let's wait for that. And then we'll go ahead and install dependencies. Cool deal. Okay, so now I gotta navigate to that folder, cd Lotto admin. Now let's install the following dependency. Let's go ahead and install all the dependencies that we need. For that, I have a package.json. It makes the implementation way simpler. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to navigate into the Lotto admin folder, and we will just modify the package.json to have all the dependencies ready to go. All we have to do is npm I, and off we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So let me land in the new window, and there we go. So this is our Lotto admin. And okay, so let's open the package.json. And we can see already some dependencies listed. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add the dependencies that we also need in order for us to build this application. We're going to be adding SF font, Web3 model, and we are going to add the front end framework, the styling framework, which is NextUI. And I am also going to add ethers because we're going to be interacting with the smart contract directly. And what else am I missing? Oh, Axios. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and install Axios, and that should be it. Okay. By doing this, I don't need to manually type, install or npm install one by one. All I'm going to do now, I'm going to save this and just npm I, and it will install absolutely everything, okay? So I'm gonna Control S, it's been saved. Now let me go back into the working folder, and I'm going to type npm I, and that will basically get all the dependencies installed, okay? Cool, everything is installed, we are good to go. Beautiful, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm going to run the server and make sure that it's running as it should. And it has next font. Okay, so we're going to be modifying that. That's the styling for NextUI. And yeah, there you go. And the Next.js instance is up and running. Awesome. Beautiful. Now let's go ahead and modify some attributes to make this compatible with NextUI. Very simple to use. Again, this is literally the front end styling. I'm not going to go into detail on that. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. I am going to open that folder. Let me go into pages, and we got the app. I got to modify this to be compatible with NextUI. I am going to do so right now. I'm just going to copy and paste. Again, I'm not going to go in details on this. Beautiful. Okay, save here. Now let's do document. Okay, this is for NextUI to be integrated into Next.js. Okay, very simple. Now let's go back and see how the website looks. You can see that it's already changing some of the styling, and that's perfectly fine. Cool. Now I want to add some logos because we have the N2D logo and we have the N2D Lotto logo. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add that into the project. Let's go ahead and click paste. There we go. So we got the into the Lotto and into the art. This is the token that we're going to be using. Okay, awesome. So we're good. Okay, now let's start building the integration that will allow this front end to talk to the backend. Okay, remember we have a backend that is going to serve all the communication to this front end. Okay, so for that, I am going to create a components folder, and inside the components folder, I am going to create two files. I'm going to create a config.js file, and I'm going to create the interfaces JS file. Okay, the config.js is going to have a very straightforward function that will allow us to interact with the connected browser wallet, and this will allow us to do the Web3 model integration with ethers, and allows me to enable the button that is going to send the token into the smart contract. We want to fulfill that contract with tokens in case someone wins the jackpot. Okay, cool. Components, beautiful. Okay, cool. Inside here, we are going to create a new file, and let's call this config.js. And the next file that I'm going to create, it's going to be interfaces. By the way, this is the name that I chose for this, okay? Beautiful. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to add the front end itself, and then we can start working with the integration to the backend. So let's add all the graphical aspect of the front end. Well, let's test and make sure that we can see the images displaying and all the buttons and all that, but there's not going to be any functionality. Okay, so what I want to do, I'm going to just paste that into the index file. I am not going to go into details on how do you do the layout or whatnot. There's so many great tutorials out in YouTube that will show you how to do CSS styling, how to do HTML styling. If I go into that, it's just going to take forever. Okay, cool. Okay, so let me go ahead and paste, and that should be it. So this is the entire HTML code. Let me Control S, and let me show you if it's properly rendered in the browser. Okay, and sure enough, that was beautiful. Okay, cool. So we got the front end. I am going to show you how its layout. Okay, there we go. Okay, awesome. So let me explain to you briefly. We are going to obtain the contract balance of how many tokens is the contract holding, the N2DR tokens that we will issue to the winner of the lotto. Okay, so we are going to be providing that payout, but we need to make sure that we hold those tokens. Okay, I am going to be configuring a button that in case there is not enough balance, or the balance in the smart contract is less than what the jackpot it's currently offering, you want to make sure that you have the balance there. So when the user claims, if a user won the jackpot, the user can claim and will have the funds. So what I'm going to do, I am going to add the functionality to this button that will allow the application to get the balance in the smart contract fulfilled. Okay, and we'll refill the smart contract with the tokens that we need. Okay, the current draw, we are going to know what's the current draw. Then we'll know how many tickets were sold in this particular draw. And finally, the N2DR, we are going to display what's the jackpot accumulated total. And we know, we have mentioned in the previous videos, that if I win a jackpot, this goes to 0. If no one has won any jackpot for any draw, it keeps increasing. So it gets accumulated and continues increasing by 1,000 tokens. So every draw is going to have 1,000 tokens as a base jackpot, and then it's just going to keep increasing until someone wins it. Okay, cool. And finally, the most important thing I would say in this particular application is going to be this counter. This counter is going to give us the exact time where this particular draw is going to end. So the moment this counter ends, we should see in the backend the instructions to close the draw, to get the numbers, to draw the winners, and do all that executing. Okay, so we will see that, and then if we refresh the browser, we should see the increment in the draw ID. Then we will see the increment in the accumulated, and so forth. Okay, beautiful. So let's start. I need to obtain the information from the backend, which means that I have to obtain how much time is left, so then I can continue the counter here. You see what I'm going? The backend is the one that is holding the time left in the draw. This front end is just going to obtain whatever is on the backend as far as the value and just continue counting here, but it's not going to affect the time left. This is just reading what it's obtaining from the backend and getting that output there. We are going to be configuring those functions in the backend first, so then we can pass this to the front end, okay? So with that said, what I'm going to do, I am going to work on the backend, the existing backend that we worked on the last video. Okay, here we go. So with that said, what I'm going to do, this is what we did in the last video. So now what I have to do, I have to build some interfaces to get the information from the smart contract, okay? Which means that I have to build additional interfaces here to get more information, because that's what the Lotto admin portal it's going to display. We need to obtain what's the current draw ID. So for that, we are going to add a function, and you can see this is exactly the same thing as any other function that we already configured in the smart contract, and how to read this from Next.js, or in this case from Node.js. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste. Okay, so let me do this, and I'm going to go over it briefly, but it's literally what we already discussed in the last video. Okay, so let's check this out. So we are building another constant called current Lotto, that this will have the async function to call the smart contract. And what it's going to do, it's going to talk to the smart contract that we already defined in the backend, and it's going to obtain the current lottery ID. If you know, there is a public var called current lottery ID. And this information is public, so we can go ahead and read that, okay, from the smart contract. Once we obtain that value, whatever the blockchain gives us back, it's going to be stored in output. And then from there, I'm just going to convert that into string, and that will be returned to the front end, okay? So this is how we're doing. We're just returning that value back to the front end. Export this, so then I can create a backend API interface that the application can use to talk to the backend. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, so the next one is going to be the balance. Let's get the smart contract balance. This value, it's basically the amount of tokens that the smart contract is holding. Okay, so this is a function that we also have in the smart contract. When we configure this function, this can be called, and then we will retrieve the amount of tokens that the application or the smart contract currently has. Okay, beautiful. And we need to obtain the jackpot amount. We need to obtain what the jackpot amount is. So what we're doing, we're basically obtaining the get draw jackpot, which is what we're doing is just creating get draw jackpot. From there, we are going to await the contract. We're going to obtain the current lottery ID, and then whatever the value is, we're just going to pass that into the view lottery, which is another public mapping that will obtain the information for a particular draw. We know in the smart contract, if you remember, we have a section where we define the jackpot in the struct. This is where we're going to get that information from, okay? So what I'm going to be returning is this value, which then in the front end, we will extract the information that we need so we can display that in the code, okay? Beautiful. And I think that's it. That's it. There's nothing else. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, awesome. So let me go ahead now, and I'm going to be exporting this, because remember, if we don't export this, we're not going to be able to call it, okay? So let me fix this syntax right here. I'm just going to press enter, 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 enter. And now let's start exporting the new ones, okay? We just exported the current Lotto. Let me go ahead and export the get balance, okay? And finally, get draw ID, or sorry, get draw jackpot. Okay, I'm gonna Control S, and let's go ahead under the backend, and we have to import those new constants here. The first one was current Lotto, so we're gonna call current Lotto. Beautiful, and then we're just going to add this below, and then we're gonna add get balance, and then finally get draw jackpot. Cool. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, now now we have the interface. We should be able to talk to the smart contract. We should be able to obtain the information. But guess what? This interface must be queried by the front end that it's just going to do the request. And we are going to build basically an API gateway or an API interface that the front end can call and get values from. If you don't know, or if you're not familiar on how you do this, there is a video that I'm going to leave the description below, the link to the description below, that it goes in detail on how to do middleware and backend integration with Next.js, so you can do all this, okay? So you will have the entire tutorial on how to do the middleware and the backend so that the front end can interact with those sections in your application. Now, with that said, I have to do the following. I am going to create those interfaces. And the first interface that I have to work with, by the way, I have the app here. I should be able to create those API interfaces so then the front end can talk to. What I have to do now here, check this out. This basically what it's going to do. Check this out. Pay attention. I am going to create a post interface that basically what it's going to do is going to expect any request going to that path in the API. So basically what I'm doing is I am sending any calls into the backend address, then / this path. This tells me it's the API. Once it lands here, if there is a defined app post, it needs to match this, so then it gets the instruction in, okay? Beautiful. Now, what we are going to do, we are going to be returning whatever the front end is asking us by doing this return new promise that will resolve the call. And the call is what we are going to be defining inside this promise, okay? And I'm just going to paste this for sake of the tutorial, okay? And by the way, the other ones are going to be exactly the same. There you go. So what we're doing basically is we're going to be calling the current lotto. Remember when we exported current lotto, I am calling it effectively here. And once we get whatever we obtain from the response from this call, what do we need to obtain, or what we are going to obtain from this call? It's going to be, let me show you, it's going to be the return ID. So what is returning in that call is the lotto ID. And this is the draw ID, okay? So if we go to the backend, what am I going to be exporting back into the front end? It's the response. What is the response? It's the lotto ID. And that's how we're going to display the first section, which is the draw ID. And I have to close the entire call or the entire function with the catch. So in case there's an error, I know what am I going to do. I'm just going to display the message and stop the process from continuing. Okay, so I have to catch the error in case there is an issue. Also, if when the response is successful, I'm just gonna review what we discussed in the backend and middleware tutorial video. By the way, the link is on the description. The status code is going to be returned 200, which is successful. I am going to specify that what I'm returning is going to be a JSON formatted content, and I will have a cache control, meaning that if I don't receive any response after a certain period, then just drop it. Then just don't keep waiting, because this will probably crash the app, or it's just going to make the application unstable because it's just sitting idle, waiting for some instruction to come in, and nothing is happening. You see where I'm going? And if everything goes well, I am going to send back in JSON stringify format the response from this, which in this case is going to be the lotto ID. Beautiful. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to be catching this, and this is how I'm going to be closing this entire call, okay? We are going to catch in case there's an issue. I'm just going to catch the error and, report back what was the error and just reply with this status, okay? Beautiful. So let me do one thing. I am going to build the function in the front end so then it can talk to the backend and we can obtain the draw ID. Once I do that, I know that we are 100% good all the way in. And then we'll just continue doing the final sections, or in this case, the other functions to complete the application, okay? So I'm gonna go Control S. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna save this as well. And if everything goes well, we should be able to run this backend without issues. So let me go ahead and open a new window. And I'm going to say node backend. All right, so let's go into the front end. I'm going to go to the front end right now. Okay, and now I need to build that first interface. For that, we're going to be using Axios. So let me import Axios from Axios. Beautiful. And then I am going to be exporting that function. Export async function. Okay. And now we can go ahead and invoke that call. But first, in order for me to talk to the backend, I need to define the backend URL, right? In this case, I am running both the front end and the backend on the same machine, but obviously you're not going to do that in production. In production, you should have a separate instance from the backend, which is protected and nothing else, but the middleware should be talking to it, not even the front end, okay? If you want to know more information on how you properly set this up, the backend middleware tutorial video that I produced, that I created, it's going to definitely help you on that, okay? So I'm just going to define backend, right? And then we're going to say the URL is going to be http / and let's call this localhost because it's a local instance. And the port, I believe it's going to be 8082. And you can see that it's already going over the entire smart contract, closing the smart contract and getting the winners and all that. Okay, so everything looks good. Okay, so 8082, awesome. So let me put that port there, 8082. And yeah, looks good. Okay, awesome. Now that I have that, like, I can effectively make the call. So I am going to build the URL. This is just literally the API URL. I'm going to call this URL. It's going to be what? It's going to be the backend plus the path. Okay. What's the first path that we coded in the backend? It's going to be the current Lotto ID. Okay, so let me go back here. Yeah, it's going to be basically this, but I have the backend set up right here, current Lotto. Okay, so this will be the actual path to the API. So then we obtain the draw ID. Let's go back, and we just need to paste this in. And obviously, it's a string, so we're just going to close it in the string, and boom. Okay, awesome. So now we have this full URL. So basically what's happening is it's grabbing this and it's adding this at the end. So it's just going to do this and then current Lotto. Okay, so that's how we are going to be able to talk to the backend and obtain all those values. Okay, now I can effectively do the call to Axios. We're using Axios. So what I want to do, I am going to build the options for the API call. This is me just telling the options and expect the header to be an application JSON content type. I have now to define the response. I am going to be obtaining that response from the backend. Response equals a what? I am going to await Axios. Remember, we're using Axios. And we're going to say post. And what I'm going to be posting, I am going to pass in the URL. That's the first parameter. And then we are passing the options. That's it. That's how you do an API call using Axios. Beautiful. And then finally, we're going to be returning the response. Okay, the response is going to be what? What should we obtain there? The draw ID. That's all we are doing. Okay, cool, beautiful, awesome. So now, if we are good, we should be able to import this into the index file. And then we should be passing this value in the placeholder for the draw ID. I need to do the following. I have to import a hook, which is the useEffect. So what we want to happen is that we want to obtain the draw ID. The moment the page loads, it auto sends the call and gets those values and display those values. We should not have a button that will manually obtain that. We should just generate that on the fly or obtain that value on the fly, okay? So what I'm going to do, because I am going to be interacting with useEffect and useState for other calls. I'm just going to take advantage and do it here. useState. Okay, so we are, oops, beautiful. So we are doing those two. Okay, now I have to import the function that I configured previously. And this is import what? Get current lottery ID And beautiful. You can see already that we got the full path and all that. Now I have this, and I should be able to obtain the values. But what we want to do is we want to use useEffect. So the moment we load the site, we load the page, we get that information right away. Okay? We don't need to call it. We just auto get the information. The lottery status. So I am going to do the following. I'm going to type async function get lotto status. Okay. And inside here, we can then call that get current lottery ID. Lotto ID, and it's just going to call this, which is going to call the backend, which the backend is going to give me the values back, and we should be good to go. Okay. So with that said, I have to do a useState. So for that, I'm going to do console log, and we're going to type lotto ID, okay? And in order for me to auto call this, the moment I load the site, I have to do useEffect, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to invoke useEffect, okay? And we're going to say, we're just going to open this entire here, and we should be able to pass get lotto status. Remember, that's the function that I just configured down here that I coded. I created that function. Then I'm not going to pass any values to useState. I'm just going to leave it there. But that should be enough to give us the lottery ID if everything goes well. Okay. By the way, this is like wrong here. But remember, we're just passing it to console. So what I have to do, I'm going to press F12, and you can see already 81. Awesome. So that will be Lotto ID 81. Beautiful. Awesome, awesome, awesome. This looks good. There you go. So we know that we're obtaining the information from the backend just fine. Now I need to be able to show this right here, which means that I have to store that in useState and that I have to pass this into the HTML code. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a useState constant right here. I'm going to say constant, and we're going to say lotto ID. Let's call this lotto ID and get lotto ID. Okay, and then this is equal to useState, and then we are just going to say that this is a value from an array. Okay. Now, what I have to do, I have to pass that into get lotto ID, right? So I'm just going to define this right here, get lotto ID. I'm going to type lotto ID. Let's see, let's just call this draw ID so it doesn't confuse us. Okay, get lotto ID. So then draw ID should be the value that we will pass into HTML. Remember, this is a response from Axios, which will probably land in data. So data is going to be the path in the API call using Axios that is going to give us that data back. So we just have to define type data, okay? And that will give us the actual number. And what am I passing into useState, into draw ID, will be the actual lotto number, which will display down. Now, if everything goes well, I should be able to get draw ID and pass that into the HTML component and reload, and we should be good to go. And you can see it right here. And I do have the current draw ID. This is literally the title. I'm going to show you right now. Current draw ID. And then we want to pass this below here, which I already have another section that we can use to define that. So let me just type it here. You can type it inside here, next to this as well. That works. So let me just do it here. And then it's going to be draw ID. That's the useState value that we just invoked right here. Okay. So let me go ahead and Control S, and let's give it a shot and see how that goes. Beautiful. Okay, there's something showing here, but we should be able to take care of that. I probably there's something that is passing here, but let me see that. Current draw ID. Oh yeah, of course. This is not needed. Beautiful. Let's go back. Perfect. Awesome. So now we got the draw ID, and this is being obtained from the blockchain. Beautiful. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to obtain how many tickets were sold and also the jackpot amount. And then we will do this at the end, which is the timer. Okay. So let's do the ticket sold. Okay, so let me go back here. The first one, let me go ahead and add the other one. I'm going to go quick. So then you understand it's basically the same thing. Let's go ahead and paste. So what I'm going to do, I am going to be calling the same URL, but in this case, we're going to be calling the draw jackpot, which is going to give us all the information regarding a particular lottery draw ID. Okay, and we can go back into the backend and you can see this on the backend. Let's go back to interfaces and you're going to see draw jackpot. It's basically calling what's the current draw ID. And then from that draw ID, then I am going to call the other function in the smart contract, which is basically the mapping to see the lottery information. We will obtain all the lottery information, and from there I can obtain how many tickets were sold, what's the current jackpot, and all that. And from there we can generate the additional data to display in the front end. Okay, let's do it. Okay, we are going to take advantage of this same function because we're just going to call this and we're going to obtain all the information that we need to be displayed in the front end. Okay, so it makes sense to use this. Now we are going to obtain from the draw jackpot. Remember, we invoked draw jackpot. We will obtain result, and then from there I can start getting the information individually. Okay, so how do I know what information am I going to be able to get? Let's give it a shot. Let me do a console log so you can see what is obtained from this call. And then we will know how to get information, specific information from the array that is going to be displayed or provided to us, right? So we do save. And let me just go back here. And there's a status code 404. What is it? What is it? Oh, we're not going to be able to get absolutely anything because we haven't done the actual interface to do the call. Duh. Okay, let's fix this. So let's create a new one. But in this case, instead of current lotto, get draw jackpot. Okay. So we get draw jackpot. This is what I'm going to be sending as the request. And then we want to make sure that we invoke the interface and the function that we have coded. Okay. Okay, beautiful. Now I have to restart the backend because this backend is going to be running. It's not going to allow us to run it in development. I have to restart it to then apply this into the environment. Looks good. Okay, so let's do this. Let me go here. And oh, beautiful. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, awesome. So now let's open this and see what we get. Now we are obtaining all the information from the smart contract draw info or the struct in the smart contract, which means that every single value, if you can see here, this is the first parameter. If you remember, let's take a look at the smart contract real quick. Let's go back here. I want to show you the information in the draw. Okay, so what you're seeing there displayed here right now, I'm going to zoom in. There we go. Okay, so now what you see right here, all this, the first section here in the array that it got back to us, 0 is the first section here, which means it's the status open. We said that open was 1. How do we know that? If we go back up, status 0, close, open 1. This is the draw ID, okay? And now let's go back. And now we can see 1. What is 1? 1, it's going to be the start time in the in this particular draw, okay? And this value is in hex, and you can just do a toString. We can invoke toString to convert this into decimal, okay? So with that said, let's go back, okay? I want to make sure that we get everything. Okay, so now we know that we get that. Now, what I need to obtain is the following. I need to obtain the jackpot, accumulated jackpot, which means that I have to get what position in the smart contract. I am going to show you right now. I am going to obtain, if this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, 3, position number 4. So I have to create a constant, and we have to obtain from result. Remember, if we go back into the front end, I'm going to show you. If we go back into the front end, you see result right here. So we have to obtain from the result the section 4 in that array. Okay, so that will be position 4. Okay, so let's check this out. So we know it's Axios, which means that it starts with data, right? That will be the output. And then now I am going to specify what section in that array. And if I say number 4, I should obtain whatever is inside that particular section. And we can manipulate that data to whatever we want to do with that data, okay? So let's go back here. I'm going to Control S, and now we should obtain a single value. There we go, beautiful. So now we are obtaining this long value, which we need to format because this is the amount of ERC-20 tokens accumulated in the Jackpot, okay? Which means that I have to convert this into decimal right here or integer and display that in HTML. So for that, I am going to get the following. I am going to create the var or the let. Okay, so I'm going to say let Jackpot, and we are going to call this raw because we haven't converted this to be integer. So we're going to say result, the same call that we did, result data, and we're going to say 4. Okay, and this is the entire value right here. So now let's manipulate this to show integer value. I am going to convert this to be integer, which means that let Jackpot int, okay? And we are going to be using a utility from ethers to do that for us, which means that I have to invoke ethers. So I'm going to bring ethers here, import ethers. Okay, and now we can use ethers right down here. So we are just going to use ethers utils. So we're going to use ethers utils, format ether, okay? And we are going to pass Jackpot raw, okay? We have passed Jackpot raw. If I console log Jackpot int, we should obtain that value in integer, okay? So let me Control S. Let's go back and let me refresh. Beautiful. There you go. This is the Jackpot. 84,000 into the R tokens. Let's remove that decimal, point here, and let's just strip, and we should be able to get this and display this under accumulated. Okay. Beautiful. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're just gonna say, just take care of this here. We're going to type let, we're going to be using that. So we're going to say let Jackpot, right, equals what? This, which was the previous value, we're going to remove that decimal. So it's going to be remove this by doing what? 0, meaning that just get rid of that, okay? Now this value should pass the string of the 84,000 without dot and decimal, okay? So it looks cleaner. Okay, so last thing that I have to do, the same thing that I did with Lotto ID, I have to do it with the Jackpot because we have to pass that to HTML, which means that I have to create another use state, but this time it's going to be for the Jackpot. So it's going to be Jackpot balance, and then we're just going to say get Jackpot. Okay, and now I have to pass get Jackpot, and then we should then pass this down into HTML. So I am going to say get Jackpot, and we are going to type Jackpot, and boom, now we are effectively passing this value onto Jackpot, and now I can use this and pass that down into HTML. So I'm going to copy it, and let's find that placeholder accumulated. There you go. So the same way that I did for draw ID right here, and you can see it. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. So you can see here, draw ID. I'm going to do it for the Jackpot by placing it right below here. Okay. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to type Jackpot balance. And if everything looks good, it should go and show us that Jackpot. There we go. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So there you go. Okay, so we got draw ID 84, and we got 84,000 as the accumulated Jackpot. And you know it's 84 and 84 because no one has won the jackpot, and there's 84 draws already. Each draw is 1,000. That's why we're accumulating all the way to 84,000, okay? Okay, and we are almost there. So now we are going to be doing the ticket sold. Let's get the ticket sold. So for this one, we need to obtain two values. We need to obtain the first ticket sold in the draw, and the last ticket, we have to subtract that, and then we will get the value, the amount of tickets. If there's no tickets, we should obtain 0. It's very straightforward, okay? So for that, I am going to obtain the first ticket and last ticket. I'm going to start doing copy and paste because we're going to go into a long tutorial. Okay, so from result, now I am going to create first ticket and last ticket ID. So we are obtaining data position 3. Remember, data position 4 was the jackpot value in the struct. Data position 3 is going to be the first ticket, and data 5 is going to be the last ticket. And you can see, you can look back into the smart contract and you're going to definitely see the breakdown, okay? Now, because I have this value, now I should be able to subtract the last ticket against the first ticket ID, and we should obtain the amount of tickets sold, basically. If nothing has incremented, this should be 0, which means no tickets has been sold. So for that, I am going to be formatting ether as well, because this value is passed in hex. Okay, so what I'm doing is very similar to what I did right here, right? I did the jackpot, I convert that to int, right? But this value is a string. If I want to subtract, I need to convert, instead of a string, I have to convert that into a number, which what I'm doing is I am literally converting it to a string, right? But then I am converting it to number on top. So like after I get the value in string, I convert that to number. Now I am effectively able to obtain the value by subtracting those two, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Now I am going to get the other function or the other instruction to subtract that. So I am going to create another function, another let. Total tickets, it's going to be last ticket number minus a first ticket number to string, okay? Beautiful. And at the end, I have to make sure that I remove that decimal same way as I did right here, else you're just going to see point dot or something, and you don't want to see that, okay? That doesn't look good. Okay, so now we are passing total tickets, and we're just going to remove 0 from it, so then it only shows how many tickets has been sold in the draw, okay? And ticket format is the information that we want to show in the front end. And now let me see something. Let me do console log to confirm that we're getting that value. And we are going to Control S, and we should be able to see that in the console. I already see it. It's 0. Beautiful. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Now we are going to display ticket sold here. So what I'm going to do, you already know. And I'm going to say get tickets sold. And then we're just going to pass ticket format. Okay. And now I have to create that here because we have to pass as use state hook. And I am going to say tickets sold. Right. And that's what I'm going to be passing to HTML. I'm going to say get ticket sold, which is what I invoked right here. And now I should be able to pass this to HTML. So let's find that placeholder, ticket sold, and then we have the placeholder right here, okay? We're just gonna say tickets sold, Control S, and we should see that 0 there. Beautiful, you love that, right? You love that, okay? We are almost done. Now what I'm going to be obtaining is going to be the amount of ERC-20 tokens inside the smart contract, the N2DR tokens. And then the last two things that I'm going to do is the timer and the recharge. And we are done, okay? Beautiful. So for that said, the first thing I'm going to do, let's work on the timer. Let's do the timer so then you can see live how much time is left, okay? So for that, we need to do a couple of things. We are going to be creating a function that will obtain the time, okay? So with that said, I have to now, have to call the backend to give me the time left, okay? And again, another function that is going to be very similar, like super similar. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to say get draw timer. And for this, we can even use fetch, which is the native Next.js API function to get us the information that we want. So I can, instead of me using access, I can type fetch, okay, which is basically very similar. Literally, it's very similar. The only difference is that the response is going to be obtained in JSON format, and I just need to convert that in, I need to obtain the values out of there. Okay, I need to retrieve the values. It is very similar to Axios. Okay, and the headers I have to say method. And I have to specify what kind of method. It's difference here is that I already specify that when I do Axios, but in this case, I have to tell it here. So I'm going to say post, right? And I'm going to say comma, and then everything else should remain the same. Oh, by the way, this is not inside the headers. This is the method. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to place it right here, and that should be it, okay? Beautiful, awesome. So that's there. Now, from response, I am going to obtain the output. So I'm going to declare this to be output, and then we're going to await response JSON. It's going to be a JSON format response and get me that. And what I'm going to pass out into the front end is going to be output. Okay, that's all we have to do. I'm going to control S. And we should obtain the value from the draw timer, but now I have to make sure that I create that interface in the backend. So let's go onto the backend once again, and we are just going to copy and paste because we're going to be using a new one. Okay. Actually, no, this is, no, yeah, we have to because we haven't done the timer. And let's use the draw timer. That will be the function. We already obtained that information. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take advantage of this. So matter of fact, let's draw this, let's label this to be backend timer. And we have to make sure that we send that call in the front end the same way, okay? And we are going to say, we are going to get draw timer. Okay, that looks good. And yeah, that should be it. Let me save here, save here. Oh, here it's already done. It's already done. Okay, awesome. So let me go ahead and stop and restart. Okay, and the new Lotto has opened, so I should be able to go ahead and stop this. And CLS, let's restart. Because remember, every time that we do a change on the backend, I have to restart the backend. And let's go back into the front end and get, remember this, it's going to be backend timer. Okay, now I should be able to obtain this value. So for now, what I'm going to do, I am going to invoke in the index. So at least we know that we're getting the value that we need, and then we can manipulate the value. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say constant time equals await get, oh, I got to import that here. If you don't import the function, you're not going to use it. Okay, get draw timer. Get draw timer. Okay, and now I can say console log time. Okay, now if everything goes well, I should be able to see the timestamp. F12, and yes, I see something. Document, and there we go, time. This is what we want. And if you refresh, that should be lower now. 43. Okay, beautiful, awesome. Cool, so we got the information. Now we need to extract this out of that particular call, which means that I have to wrap this into another var, or at least I'm going to say the following. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to show you. So I can say time, then document, then time, okay? So if I do that, now I should only see the time. Beautiful, beautiful. There you go, time. Awesome. Beautiful. Okay, so we got that. Now we have to build that counter, okay? Because we're not going to be refreshing the site every second. We cannot do that. We have to instead count locally. We will obtain what's the last time in Mongo database by just calling the backend, but now we have to continue counting, so then we count independently here. If we refresh, we're just gonna get the values back, and then we'll just count and continue counting, okay? So for that, we have to build that fancy function. The function is going to allow us to count and lower this, and allow us to count at the same time as the backend is doing it, okay? So now I am going to do this entire function. I'm going to go over it very quick because it's just going to take a long time if we go one by one, okay? So now we know that this is good, okay? So I am just going to remove this from here because we're done with this particular function. I'm going to Control S. Now we're going to paste this amazing counter, okay? What we're doing, we are going to obtain from getDrawTimer, we are going to obtain the information into response, and then from there we are going to call time. Remember, that's how we were able to see the time in the console, okay? Now this value, what I'm going to be doing with this value is that I am going to be setting an interval. If you remember in the video when we configured the backend, we work with set interval, which allows me to constantly run a function, okay? At every interval. If we take a look at the function right here, we are counting every second. Every second we are going to be running this entire set interval right here. All this, okay? What is going to happen, okay? This is what's going to happen. It's going to say, okay, inside the interval, if time left, which is the backend is lowering that number. The backend is writing to Mongo database and it's lowering the counter, okay? It's lowering the counter by 1 second because that's how we configure the function there to lower the counter. If the time left, it's less than 0 or less equal to 0, that means that you completed counting. And in this case, we want to go over again. We are going to restart this entire thing. And you want to just console in the log that is completed, that everything has completed. Else, this is where we do the counter. We are going to convert hour. We are going to declare hour. We're going to be using the mat object in JavaScript. We're going to call floor that allows me to send me back the greatest, and you can see the greatest integer less than or equal to its numeric argument. Okay, so it's just going to give me what's the less or equal to its numeric argument in this particular formula, which what it's doing, listen to me carefully, it's grabbing time left, which is the millisecond value of the counter of the current time that is left, and it's going to basically do the following. If we want to obtain an hour, this is how we convert that into milliseconds. We are going to be multiplying 1000 times 60. 60, we know it's 60 seconds. It's 1000, it's 1 second. 60 seconds times 60 seconds is equal to 1 minute. Times 60 minutes, it's 1 hour. But then we have to subtract that from what the current time is in the time left. Okay, in the backend time on the draw, what's the time left? We have to divide that. And then we are just going to apply %24 because it's 24 hours. Remember, every day has 24 hours, which means that tells us it's the hour. Okay, that's how we know that this is the hour, or that's how we obtain the time left in hours. So we can display the entire thing, okay, in the counter. We will obtain the hour, the minutes, and the seconds, and then we just continue counting until we ran out of time, okay? The same goes with minute. And you can see here, we effectively remove 60. Now we're just dividing 1000 times 60. That gives us the minutes, and this will be divided against time left, and then we will just obtain this in 60, which means that 60 seconds is 1 minute. Okay, that's how we obtain the minute left in the counter. And then we'll do second, very similar, but in this case, we're removing the minute, and I'm just going to divide this by the time left, which is the value in milliseconds, and we're just going to obtain that to be the seconds, okay? And once we obtain each value, what I'm going to do, I am going to pass that as a DOM element, and I'm going to be invoking hours in the front end in HTML, and we are going to go and see it right now. You can see hours. I am going to be invoking that in right here. So basically hours, this is the element by ID, and we are just passing that value from the counter, okay? So this is how we do the counting. Good, awesome. What do we need to do? Once we do all this counting and we do this math, we will be decreasing time left by 1 second. So then it keeps decreasing, it keeps decreasing, it keeps decreasing. Okay, the moment the time runs out, I want to refresh the browser. I want to refresh the window, so then it starts counting whatever the new count value is in the backend or in Mongo database. I am going to be continuing counting, okay? And this is the set interval, which basically what it's going to do is just going to loop it, continue endlessly, because we want to keep counting. We're going to count every second, okay? So now, in order for me to trigger this at the beginning, what do I have to do? I just have to add this inside useEffect, okay? And now when I Control S, go back, I should have that counter beautifully. There you go. Awesome. All right. So now we can effectively see that it's only 2 minutes and 54 seconds left for this particular draw to complete. Okay. And we already see that it went all the way to draw 88. If we refresh, we should be able to obtain what the current value is. But again, if we were not storing this in Mongo database, if you refresh, it should just start all over again because it grabs the last value and that's what it has stored. Okay, so it starts all over again. So that's why we're doing Mongo database, because we have to centrally store the time so that we can decrease it and we just read the value and continue counting. That's it. Okay, and we are almost done. The last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to display the contract balance. And we will add the function and off we go. We're done with this portion of the application. Let's get the balance in the smart contract for the N2DR token. So we need to know the amount of tokens in the smart contract, how many tokens are left. So then we know for a fact that we are going to be able to pay the jackpot, okay? So with that said, I am going to open the config.js file. I just created that file. And let's go and add the interface. Let's import a Web3 model so that we can interact with the browser wallet. Let's go ahead now and add a function that it's going to get the wallet interacting with the button that we will create to refill the smart contract if we need to replenish the balance for the jackpot payout, okay? So I am going to just paste this in. This is very quick, okay? So what am I going to do? I am going to be calling both the lottery smart contract because we need to obtain the balance in the smart contract, and we need to also interact with the ERC-20 token smart contract, in this case, the N2DR token smart contract, because if I need to transfer from my wallet to the smart contract additional N2DR tokens, I need to invoke the ERC-20 token smart contract, okay? I need to have the Lotto ABI as well as the ERC-20 smart contract ABI. So I need to obtain those two ABIs. I already got the ABIs, but you can export those out of Remix or your compiler. You can obtain the ABI. You can generate the ABI, and then you import that as a JSON file, okay? Okay, so in that case, what I'm going to do, I am going to just paste that file right here, and you can see that I have the token ABI. That will be used for the call into the blockchain in case we need to send the ERC-20 tokens onto the smart contract, okay? So with that said, we already got the ABI, and it's good to go here. I am going to go over this, okay? So what I'm doing, I am basically declaring Web3 model. So I'm invoking the Web3 model function. Then we will go ahead and establish the connection to the browser wallet. This is the moment that I'm going to open that wallet. And then I'm going to be wrapping, or storing provider under ethers. So I'm going to be invoking providers from the ethers.js library, and then we will specify that we will be using the browser wallet as the connection, as the provider, okay? And then for my transactions, I need to sign that transaction, which means that I have to obtain the signer, in this case, the wallet. I am going to be passing this, which is the signer address or the signer info, the data for the signer. So then I can build that call in the smart contract, okay? Then I am also going to pass the ERC-20 token smart contract address, which we have right here, as well as the lottery smart contract, okay? So I am going to be exporting this from ETH Connect into the index, so then I can do that interaction, okay? So let's go ahead. I just exported that. I am going to save it. Now I should be able to obtain values if I import that and obtain and store that into a var. So I'm going to be invoking this, and I should be able to obtain this information in index, okay? So for that, I am going to, let me go ahead and format this real quick. There we go, awesome. And now we have to do ETH Connect, okay? And I'm gonna save it. Now I should be able to make that that function that will allow us to get that info. Okay, so let's build that function. So now, speaking of that, I got ETH Connect. As a matter of fact, I should not. Let's do the following. I am going to build this function in interfaces, not in the index. The index is just to render the output. So ideally, you want to do any API integration, any API calls in the interfaces.js, and then we'll just export the values. And the index should be to just display what we already render or what we already obtain from smart contract calls, okay? Or blockchain or the backend call, okay? So with that said, I am going to create another function to get the balance. So that function, I am going to call the backend and obtain that information in. So I'm going to show you under interfaces, we are going to be calling get balance, which we added that at the beginning of the video. Okay, and we will obtain a balance. So we will be calling that, we should be obtaining that, the value, okay? And now all I need to do is I have to create the API post gateway here, and I have to tell get balance, okay? Now, if I do that, I can go ahead and invoke get balance. So the moment the front end talks to the back end, it's going to send that post request to get balance, and then we should be able to trigger that function in the interface, okay? So I'm just gonna say get balance, and boom, beautiful. Cool, that looks good. So I'm going to Control S, and I have to restart the backend. Okay, done. I'm gonna clear, and we are going to type node backend, and let's start it once again. Now we should have those changes in place. Okay, we're done with the backend side. We should have that backend interface to obtain the get balance. Now what I have to do in the front end, I am going to build another function similar to this one to obtain the balance, okay, to call the backend. So let's do this with Axios. I am going to just copy that. And by the way, you can do it using fetch. You can do it using Axios. You just need to make sure that you format the output accordingly, okay? In Axios, we will expect the response.data, and then from data, we obtain the values that we need to render and display on the front end, okay? So with that said, this is not going to be get draw jackpot. This will be get balance, okay? And then this is going to call get balance in the backend. Okay, so we obtain get balance. Now let me save this and let me go back onto index, and now should be able to import this get balance right here. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now what I'm going to do, I am going to do the async function to obtain the balance. So let's call this async function fetch balance, right? And then inside here, we are going to obtain the output from that call and see if it works. We got to make sure that we are able to obtain those values, okay? So we're going to say let balance equals a weight, and we will now call get balance, which we just configured in the interfaces. We already imported that, as you can see. Beautiful. So now I'm going to say console log balance. Let's see what output do we get. Remember, this is not going to be triggered unless we either add this in the useEffect hook or we have like a button that we can attach this function to. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to Control S and let's see how that goes. Okay. So I'm going to just refresh right here and let me see here. And oh, okay, there he goes. We already see that. As a matter of fact, no, this is not the balance, I think. 2512. Let's go back. Let's see what that is. 2512. No, actually it is. Awesome. Awesome. So we do have the balance. Okay. So that means that it's working. It means that it's working. It means that we're getting the information. And you can see here that we have this amount, and this amount has not been formatted to be displayed in either value or either format. It's literally way. So we have to do some, we have to run the util, and we should be able to obtain the value in ethers. Okay. So with that said, now I know that I obtained that value. I need to be able to pass that value so that we can display the value right here. And this is literally from the smart contract, okay? So what I'm going to do, check this out. I'm going to go back and we will then create a new use state so that we can pass that into HTML as we have done with the other calls. And we're going to say current balance. Okay, and we will say get Lotto balance. Okay, and then we'll say current balance. This will be passed into HTML. So let me then pass this value to this function. But first, we have to modify. We have to obtain the raw output. We have to extract the values out of this raw output, which means that I have to call data. Data will give me what we need. Okay, and then we'll format that. So let me show you back. So if we do balance.data, right, and we go back and refresh, let's see now. There you go. Beautiful, right? There he goes. Okay, now we should be able to format this and only display the ether value, not way, in the N2DR balance section on the portal. So let me go. And we're done. We're definitely done. Then we're going to say we are going to paste this and check this out. What I'm going to do, I am going to be passing balance. Remember, we obtained balance from the output. We already obtained that raw way value. Now, this is the output that should give us the actual token in ether format, right? So balance format, okay. I'm going to Control S and let's take a look at again. And there you go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Now we should be able to pass that onto the front end. And we already have a used state hook. So, no, this is the back end. There we go. Awesome. So what I'm going to do, I am just going to grab this, right? I'm going to copy it. I'm going to say get Lotto balance and I'm going to pass that balance format. Beautiful. Okay. And now, because I am passing that to use state, I should have the value stored here and we can display that in the front end. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's see contract into the R balance, and we should be able to paste this right below here where it goes over this particular text HTML object. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I am going to wrap this here in brackets, and that should be it. We should be able to see the balance in the front end. So I'm going to Control S and let's see. Beautiful, beautiful, awesome. Okay, we're done. Last thing we have to do is add the functionality to recharge in case there is not enough balance, okay? And we have seen that the counter just stopped, or it ended and actually refreshed to the new draw, okay? Which is awesome. So now what I'm going to do, I am going to obtain this balance, okay? And I'm going to say, if this balance is lower than the jackpot that is accumulated, then go ahead and recharge. So when we click here, we will recharge the smart contract as long as the balance that is in the smart contract is less than what the jackpot is. So then we can replenish the jackpot pool. Okay, cool. So with that said, I'm going to say recharge into the contract balance. This button, we're going to do that function. We'll do it real quick. It's very straightforward. This is a normal ERC-20 transfer function. I'm just going to go very briefly onto it, okay? And for that, we are going to configure the last function right here. So I'm going to show you, just going to copy the whole thing, and I'm going to explain to you step by step what it's doing, okay? Instead of me just going line by line, okay? It's very, very straightforward. Don't get intimidated by this. Remember ETH Connect? We obtain those values out of ETH Connect, okay? So if we go back into config, we have ETH Connect. What we should obtain as the return of ETH Connect is those three values. We should be able to sign transactions with signer, and we are going to have the smart contract address for the token smart contract and the lottery smart contract address, or lottery smart contract, okay? So with that said, when we go and invoke this, that means that I have to, first of all, I have to import this, which I haven't done. So I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. I'm going to import ETH Connect from config. You can see it auto imports. And now from the call, you can see already that this is what we should obtain as the response from that particular call. So when we finish processing this function, await the promise that, get the response that we get back, it's going to be stored in call, and then we can use call.erc20. You can see here, this is the end-to-the-R token smart contract address, this is the lottery, and this is the wallet, okay? Now, I need to obtain the amount from the jackpot pool, okay? Because I need to calculate if the jackpot balance it's less or more than the jackpot accumulated, okay? So with that, you can see here what we're doing is get draw jackpot, which should be over here. There you go. So what that's going to do is going to go back to the backend, get me the values for the draw jackpot, and we already are getting those values. As you can see, this is that value, okay? So we are obtaining those values, and then we have to obtain this balance as well, and then do the math. If this is higher than this, guess what? You have to fund the contract. Else, you're not gonna need to fund the contract, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So, okay, so once we get the jackpot, this is gonna be the same balance. We are going to convert that into a number because we have to compare those two values, right? So we got the jackpot balance in an integer. Now we are going to invoke the smart contract function, so then we can do that interaction. What am I going to do? I am going to verify balance of lottery smart contract. We are obtaining that balance from the smart contract, the lottery smart contract. Then whatever output you receive from this, which is going to be in hexadecimal, we have to convert that into a number, right? So now we obtain the balance inside the smart contract, and we're going to say the following. If the jackpot number, which in this case is the jackpot accumulated pool, is higher than the balance number, right? Then go ahead and transfer. And what am I going to transfer? I am going to be transferring the amount of the jackpot. So I am going to be transferring the additional tokens necessary to fulfill the contract and have enough balance to pay the jackpot, okay? Else, contract has enough funding. That's it, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna go back under index, right? And we have to invoke that function inside here. So I have to import this function and then do the manipulation as we wish, okay? And now, you know what? I decided to do also one last thing, and it's very simple. I am going to add another useEffect. And this use effect, what it's going to do is going to constantly check the balance of the smart contract. And it's going to do it every 30 seconds. Why? Because you want to see if the smart contract was fulfilled, or if the smart contract, you got sales, token sales, or sorry, I would say ticket sales, and the balance is increasing. You want to see that every 30 seconds, you should get an update. Okay, so every 30 seconds, we should see this incrementing if there was a payout to the game. If someone bought a ticket, the balance should start incrementing. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and finish this, and we are done. Okay, so we got the fetch balance, and we are basically just wrapping it the same way. Set interval, so it's just every 30 seconds, it's just going to continue, and then once it's done, they just clear the interval, so it starts all over. Okay. Okay, cool. So that's set, and the last function that I have to add is going to be that funding. So we are going to add a function that is going to be attached to the button. What it's going to do is going to call that fund contract that we just built with that entire execution order, where we get the jackpot amount, we get the balance, we calculate if it's less or more, then go ahead and execute the transfer, else tell us that the balance is already, there's no need to fulfill the balance, okay? Or refill the balance, I would say. Okay, so now what I have to do, I have to say get fund. I just have to attach get fund to the button. So let's go ahead, let's see the button, it's right here. And we are just going to call this on press, and we're just gonna say get fund, okay? And what that's gonna do is just gonna make the entire call. And I just did a result, okay? So whatever the return, right, is from that contract, if there's no need to refill the smart contract, I should obtain this this return right here. Contract has enough funding. So we should see that in the front end. And as you know, what I'm doing, I'm invoking this ID in an HTML div. Basically, this is what I'm doing. So I'm going to show you right now. And you should see result right here. So H4 result, and basically we should see that message displayed if we don't need to replenish the smart contract, okay? Control S, I'm going to make sure that I'm also Control S right here. Edit once again. Boom. And it actually, it's higher. So right now, because we have incremented the draw to 129, the smart contract only has 128,000 into the R. So this was actually good. It came right at the best moment because now it increased over the jackpot. The jackpot increased over the available balance amount. So we are actually testing this as we speak. Awesome. This came right in the spot we wanted. And you can see now the transaction is asking us, hey, yeah, we want to transfer 129,000 into the Rs, which is the accumulated. So now it's just going to be double, which is fine because if there's other draws after this is fulfilled, then you have enough funds. Okay, so I'm going to confirm. And now once this is boom, it got confirmed. I have undefined because there was actually a need to fill the contract. I should have some return that says contract filling in progress, but we can see that we have successfully incremented the balance in the smart contract. Alrighty, and this is the administrator portal for the end-to-the Lotto. Simple as that. Simple as that. Actually, it's not simple. It's it takes time. It takes effort, but once you start seeing the fruits of your dedication and your hard work, it definitely is worth it. Okay, it feels great. It feels great to make, to do and accomplish so many great things when you start coding and you start making things work. It's very, very rewarding. I can tell you for a fact. Okay, that's it for this video. On the next and final video, we will code the Lotto web front end so that users can buy those Lotto tickets, participate in draws, and hopefully win the jackpot. So if you like this video and my content, you know what to do. Thumbs up, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.